So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to another delightful day in Amsterdam. Now about a year ago I took out a Virgin branded credit card, and alongside the welcome bonus I got for doing so and the miles I earned when flying with Virgin and Delta across to Las Vegas last year, I quite quickly earned enough points for a redemption one way in business class. Now Virgin has redemption agreements with a number of airlines beyond just Virgin Atlantic, including KLM and Air France. So I had a very good look at the options and found a redemption on KLM that I was quite excited about, from here in Amsterdam down to Bonaire in the Caribbean, with a stop in Aruba on the way to just extend the fun a little. So I was very excited to book that seat, and I booked it on one of KLM's 787s, which has their new 121 all-aisle configuration. And a couple of months after I booked it, they did the dirty on me and changed the equipment to one of their older 777s with a 222 configuration. I did think about cancelling and starting the booking process all over again, but I'd organised my onward travel and it was just too much of an effort. So today I will be flying with KLM on a 777 product in their old 222 configuration from here to Bonaire via Aruba. Off to Schiphol Airport now to check in, and if you'd like to see what the experience is like, stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.4 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe to see where I go next, and perhaps get some inspiration for your next trip. So as I navigate across Amsterdam towards Schiphol Airport, the first question you may be asking is, where is Bonaire? It's one of 6 Dutch territories in the Caribbean. The 3 largest, Aruba, Curaçao and St Martin, are now constituent countries of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and so are considered to be countries which sit alongside the Netherlands itself in the kingdom. Although they have some autonomy, they aren't independent and so do not have a seat at the United Nations. The 3 smaller territories, Saba, St Eustatius and my destination today, Bonaire, are all special municipalities within the country of the Netherlands, although they aren't part of the European Union. Collectively, these 3 bits of the Netherlands are known as the BES Islands, the BES Islands, although as Aruba, Bonaire and Curaçao are grouped in the very south of the Caribbean Sea close to Venezuela, they are collectively known as the ABC Islands, and you thought the status of Britain's overseas territories was complicated. I'd previously been to Aruba and Curaçao on a cruise, so I'd chosen to visit Bonaire to complete my ABCs. Schiphol Airport is the world's 5th busiest international airport and markets itself as a one-terminal facility in the belief that people will choose to connect there, as the perception is that changing terminals can be a pain. But handling the 5th most international passengers in the world in one terminal makes that terminal absolutely enormous. I eventually found the KLM desks, and the business check-in area was large and pleasant. I was quickly processed and learned that the plane was going to be completely full. Good for KLM, but my hopes of having an empty seat next to me in the 222 configuration were dashed. It also explains the equipment change, as the 777 has 40% more seats than the 787 I originally booked. Business class passengers can then access a premium shortcut up to security, which comprise those new-fangled security machines that don't require you to remove electronics and liquids from your bag. Which sounds fantastic, and the hassle factor was certainly greatly reduced, but boy was it slow! In fact, I reckon it was slower than the conventional screening process would have been, on that day at least. Then, as we were leaving the Schengen area, I joined a lengthy queue for a passport check. Amsterdam has developed a reputation for lengthy queues of late, and this premium queue took 15 to 20 minutes to complete. We passed through an automated passport gate, but then everyone needed to be inspected by an agent, so us Brits could be identified, as we now need a physical stamp as a result of Brexit. So it took around 30 minutes from arriving at the check-in desk until I was through into the very pleasant terminal. And it was time for some lounge time, and as Amsterdam is one giant terminal, it was quite a walk. The Crown Lounge is KLM's flagship offering. There's no first class cabin offered on KLM, so this is as good as it gets. There's a Crown Lounge in the Schengen departure area, but this was the non-Schengen version, which is far larger. I'll talk about KLM's blue houses later. But KLM also sells entry to this lounge, €65 I believe, which isn't cheap and which seems to be a pragmatic decision in challenging times for the airline, even if it is a little unusual for a flagship lounge. It's fairly spacious inside and is broken into different zones. Upstairs is the Sky Zone with a bar and food area, although the latter was only opening when I left the lounge at around 1 p.m. The Sky Bar is quite pleasant, although it was hard to find a seat away from the bar. Good apron views. It's also a little unusual for an airline lounge in that it charges for some of the drinks. Basic drinks are complimentary, but charges are levied for most of the premium offerings. I'm not sure I love this approach as it doesn't fit the usual lounge template, but there were some decent complimentary options. Well, this was Cava rather than champagne. Cheers! Downstairs is notionally zoned, although the decor felt consistent throughout. There were food areas at both ends with a bar just off centre. Again, it was hard to find a seat, although the lounge probably wasn't that full. A lot of people were sleeping across multiple seats, and much of the space was designed for groups of 4 or 6, so filled up rapidly as most of the seating units were occupied by only 1 or 2 people. Service at the bar upstairs was very friendly, but downstairs it was a little surly and grudging. A few new starters too, who seemed to have received no training prior to their first shifts. One had to ask what went into a gin and tonic, which was a bit of a shame, and it soured the experience somewhat, particularly as my flight experienced an hour's delay. The lounge is nice enough, but it was let down by a couple of things. The design of the seating is poor and does not reflect what the customers need, plus some of the staff just didn't seem to want to be there. So off to the gate, and I timed it well as pre-boarding was just starting. We were flying first to Aruba, and many of us would then continue on to Bonaire. The service operated as a triangle and then it returned from Bonaire to Amsterdam, so those leaving the plane in Aruba would be replaced by people heading to Amsterdam via Bonaire. I don't believe KLM is able to sell flights just from Aruba to Bonaire. So on board this Boeing 777 and through the business cabin to my seat 3A. At the seat I found hygiene and amenity kits, menus and a blanket and pillow. The seat has a large screen in front of you offering gate-to-gate entertainment, beneath which is the inevitable foot cubby, which is the inevitable consequence of this design of seat. You can see it's not huge. I didn't try to sleep on this flight, but it looked cramped. Finishing the seat tour, a bottle of water, headphones and power were over my shoulder and lights were overhead, although there were no personal air vents, following the BA thrift approach in this regard, it seems. A pre-departure champagne was duly delivered and was enjoyed. Airlines often try to make their safety videos distinctive, and KLM succeeds with an animated video based on the famous blue and white Delft tiles. More about the blue and white little houses later. Ami pushed back and took off. As I mentioned earlier, this was a redemption booking made through Virgin. I'd received over 37,000 points from flying to Vegas on Virgin, which was almost enough for this 42,000 point redemption. I got the extra points from a welcome bonus I received from taking out a Virgin branded credit card. I'd considered starting from London, which would still have cost 42,000 points, but doing so would have added nearly £200 to the cash cost because of the long-haul air passenger duty that KLM would have had to add to the flights departing London. It would have meant an extremely early start too. So I decided to fly from Amsterdam and to take the Eurostar across the night before the flight. So overall this flight cost me 42,000 points plus £183 in taxes and fees. You can buy 40,000 Virgin points for 600 quid, so could get this flight for under £800 using points, when it costs 2,800 if you buy the flight for cash. I'm just saying. It was about a 9-hour run down to our stop in Aruba, and I can't say I expected us to pass north of Glasgow en route, but that's what the Great Circle does to you. Service started with a hot towel and then a drinks round. I opted for a gin and tonic. plus either nuts or Dutch cheese. That flag is a nice touch. You can immediately see that KLM uses high quality service items, really nice glassware and bowls. The menu looked good, although 3 options for the main course between the 30 passengers in the business cabin might be one short of what would have been ideal. Mid-flight snacks were available and the pre-landing meal promised to be substantial, which is probably fair enough given the length of the flight. The tray table comes out pretty smoothly from the arm unit beside you and is large and sturdy even if you aren't able to exit your seat with the table out. A tablecloth was laid, but the starter was then plonked down on a tray. I'm being a little harsh here as, spoiler alert, the service was excellent, but that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The smoked bavette was excellent. Continuing with the ultra pickiness, KLM lost another mark by requiring me to recycle my silverware for the main course. The other starter was soup, which didn't require a knife and fork to be reused, so I suppose it might be greener to do it this way, but it's not a premium look. Then as my main I chose the trio of delicacies, chicken, cod and vegetables, all of which were really tasty. The salt and pepper clogs are a cute detail too. There was a separate wine menu, although they didn't have any of the Portuguese wine aboard, which was a little annoying as you'd expect stuff printed on menus to be available. The South African wine was pretty good though. Then cheese for dessert accompanied by some port. Then we still weren't quite done, so chocolates were handed out. I switched to a cognac as I settled in to watch a movie. As I reclined to do so, I noticed that the previous passengers' socks had not been cleared. They'd said the plane was late arriving, but that's a big miss. And having spotted that, I had a closer look around and found a number of other service items lurking under my seat, including that ear bung. Not good, although I had peeked down the back of the seat in front of me on boarding and had been quite impressed with the cleanliness down there. We all had to disembark in Aruba where the plane was cleaned again, and they did a far better job than the Amsterdam team had, as everything I'd found was cleared away in Aruba. I have moderate to severe hearing loss, so I'm never going to give you great feedback on the provision of audio on flights I take, but even I could detect that these provided headphones weren't brilliant. But the screen was good, controlled via a handset remote. I think my mate Andy was at this Queen concert at Wembley in 1986. I didn't try to sleep on this flight, and perhaps unusually I didn't feel the need for a nap either, but the conversion of the seat to a flatbed was smooth, although as I expected the foot cubby is tight. Not the longest bed in the sky, but I was able to lie flat out, and I'm 6'3.5 inches tall. That's 192 centimetres if you're that way inclined. Being in a window seat helped, but it felt really private too when fully reclined. A light and controls were revealed by the recline too. Speaking of being in a window, the two seats are slightly offset with the window seat slightly further forward. Even though it's inconvenient to have to inconvenience your neighbour to get to the conveniences, it felt really private in the seat, and I really couldn't see my neighbour at all during the flight. I wasn't thrilled about the 222 layout, but it turned out to not be that bad. Speaking of conveniences, here's the toilet. It's an airplane toilet, distinguished by the little houses graphics on the wall, which I promise I will talk about later. Time passed with the assistance of some movies. No land to look at below until we landed as we passed to the east of Puerto Rico. And about 90 minutes before landing, the second meal was served. I went for the burger, which was actually a little disappointing, greyish meat which hadn't come through the heating process particularly well, plus a monster slab of chocolate cake. Unusually for me, there was no way I could eat all of it, as it was really substantial, although I had partaken of the mid-flight stroopwafel ice cream, which I'd enjoyed but not managed to film. And as promised, then came the ceremony of the little houses. On all long-haul KLM flights, Delft houses filled with Bols gin are offered to business class passengers. frequent Dutch travellers immediately reach for an app which tracks their collections so they can be sure they select a new one from the tray. I had to ask the flight attendant to spin the tray around for this shot, as they were initially presented backside on so the house numbers could be seen. It's quite taboo to actually drink the gin inside the house apparently, so I had to pop the house into my hand luggage liquids bag to get it home, but I'm happy I did, as my Blue House collection now stands undrunk at 1. And down into Orangestad in Aruba. Everybody needed to deplane so it could be cleaned, although the crew stayed on for the 40-minute leg on to Bonaire. They asked all passengers whose destination was Aruba to get off first, and then those continuing to Bonaire were ordered off. A simple boarding pass check allowed us through to the departure lounge, no more security to clear. There was a basic status lounge which I was able to access, and a few amenities were still open in the terminal for this flight, which was the last to depart that day. About an hour to wait before we were called back on board. The boarding gate in Aruba wasn't really designed to handle a 777, so it was a bit of a scrum. So back into seat 3A, another pre-departure champers, but there was no other service on this flight across to Bonaire, which I think is fair enough, as there was only perhaps 10 minutes of level flight. The plane was spotlessly clean though. And down into Bonaire, where, perhaps oddly, passengers continuing to Amsterdam could stay on board, even though the crew all got off and changed. No boarding fingers at Bonaire, so down the steps and across the apron. Bonaire is part of the Netherlands, so it doesn't count as a country within the UN, but I can count it on my country list, and it's also a distinct territory according to the Travellers Century Club, so I can chalk one up there too. This video explains all of that. We needed to show proof that we'd paid the $75 traveller tax required from all visitors, not something the airline collects or even makes you aware of, I'll note. And even though it's effectively a domestic flight from Amsterdam to Bonaire, there's still a passport check from which I got a stamp with a flamingo on it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I'll be making a video about what I found in Bonaire, and it was all a bit odd if I'm honest. So KLM. I really enjoyed the flight and needn't have worried about the change of equipment, as the seat was really quite good. The service was excellent from the great friendly crew. And although I can be really picky by mentioning a couple of small shortcomings with the in-flight service, it was really good overall. KLM is a legacy airline and doesn't attempt to be quirky like Virgin or JetBlue, but it does offer some legacy touches that are quite delightful, including the ceremony of the blue houses. Not in contention to be the best business class product in the world, but far from being the worst. Although there is no excuse for loading us onto a dirty plane. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please give this video a like. Please also subscribe if you didn't do so after my exhortation to do so a moment ago. And please leave a comment. Have you flown on KLM? Would you consider doing so after watching this video? And if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, I have a Patreon account, the link to which is in the description below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.